The farming community of Eston, a short distance from Pietermaritzburg, played host earlier this month to the third round of the South African Off-Road Championship. The Bell Sugarbelt 400 attracted the biggest field of the season so far, with a full turnout of the country's leading car, bike and quad racers. You can always rely on the motorcycle brigade to provide for spectacular racing, with some of them starting the race as though there was going to be no tomorrow. The opening events of the season, the Rustenburg 400 and the Barbaspan 500, produced two different winners. And right from the start, Darrell Curtis on the Pro Action AGA Panasonic KTM and Errol Dalton on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda fought out an enthralling battle. Also involved in the early stages were Richard Manning on the dealer team Yamaha and Graham McLaughlin on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda. The top riders in South African off-road racing are world-class performers. The championship has been dominated in recent years by Alfie Cox, who is currently campaigning overseas, but in his absence there is certainly no shortage of top competition. Curtis was setting a cracking early pace, but Manning and Dalton were staying with him all the way. There is a fierce but friendly rivalry among the riders, who make flat-out racing look all too easy. Some terrific battles quickly developed throughout the field, and it was a case of survival of the fittest. Also flying in the early stages of the race was Gavin Nimmo on the privately entered Kawasaki. Nimmo was being chased by 500cc class championship leader Rian van Niekerk on the PD Motorcycles Honda, with a battle between the two being repeated throughout the field. Out in front, Darrell Curtis was going like the clappers. Curtis had never won a national event and was determined to get it right this time. He was being shadowed by Errol Dalton, who was riding with a broken shoulder blade that had not yet properly healed. Keeping Curtis and Dalton in his sights was Richard Manning, who had taken an early grip on the 200 class. Graham McLaughlin had moved into the 250 class this season and was still up with the front runners. The Bloemfontein rider was still ahead of Gavin Nimmo, who was still on a charge. Also still on a charge was Curtis, who was in a terrific hurry when he arrived at a refuel area. Every second counts in an off-road race, and Curtis was anxious to get going again before the opposition arrived on the scene. While Curtis frantically searched for his fuel can, local youngsters were taking a much calmer outlook on life. It was hardly the sort of fuel stop you see in Grand Prix racing, but with the Pro Action AGA Panasonic KTM topped up with fuel, Curtis was back into the race with no other rider yet into the refuel area. Next into the service area was Errol Dalton on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda. The shoulder injury did not appear to be bothering Dalton too much, and his fuel stop was a little more organized than the Curtis effort. That aside, there was an enthralling twist to their battle. Taking into account time trial results, Curtis had to reach the finish more than 30 seconds ahead of Dalton to be sure of victory. Curtis was doing all he could to put time and distance between himself and Dalton, but the Barbaspan 500 winner was also not letting the grass grow under his feet. Dalton knew he had to keep within 30 seconds of Curtis, but his injured shoulder was a worrying factor. Behind Curtis and Dalton, 200 class leader Richard Manning was third on the road. Manning had a tight grip on his class, but was being caught by Gavin Nimmo, who was in impressive form on the privately entered Kawasaki. Also working his way through the field was Brian Bontekoning on the Antelex Dairy Schimmels Yamaha. Bontekoning had caught and passed teammate Alex Bowles on the Antelex Kawasaki, who was second in the 200 class. Bowles was going well, but had dropped a long way behind class leader Richard Manning. Lance Trethaway on the KTM and Rian van Niekerk were locked in a great battle in the 500 category, but neither had a hope of catching Dalton, who was leading the class. Clayton Enslin on the PD Motorcycles Kawasaki had also lost touch with the frontrunners in the 200 class. After a promising start to the race, Graham McLaughlin was slowly dropping down the field on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda, with Grant Bloomfield on the AGA Panasonic KTM out of touch with the 500 class leaders. It was all of academic interest because out in front Darryl Curtis had finally got it right. Much to the delight of his supporters, Curtis stormed home for his first ever national championship win.
After all those seconds, finally did it.
We were very close between you and Errol. Where did you get away from him?
Well, Errol got a puncture on his second lap, put a new wheel in. I got a puncture on my third lap, and when we left after the third lap we were so close together, and it was just one big race to the end.
A long overdue win for Darryl Curtis ahead of Errol Dalton and Gavin Nimmo. Curtis took the 250 class, Dalton the 500 category, and fourth place Richard Manning won the 200 class.